Hello, my name is Teresa Strange, and this is my final project for presidential leadership. Please excuse my raspy voice, I have a cold. Anyway, let's get going. The election of Barack Obama to be the 44th president of the United States was truly an historical event for many reasons. But one of them is that rhetoric was one of the defining characteristics of his campaign and of who Obama is. Now, he's been a popular leader who has motivated people to action. Now, this was not always the case with presidential elections or with the role of the president. Now, Jeffrey Tullis describes in the Rhetorical Presidency that the Founding Fathers actually designed a completely different system where they did not want the president to be a popular leader who would use rhetoric to motivate people to act and to pressure Congress to bring about certain public policies. So he discusses in his book that the change in the role of the president reflects not the evolving technologies or methods of communication, but really our understanding of the Constitution and the role of the president. So let's go back and look at the founders. They believed that Congress and the president had the role of governance, not the people. They created representative offices rather than immediately responsive democratic offices, and that they wanted to minimize the role of immediate public opinion. They wanted Congress to be a place of deliberation where they could discuss the intricacies and technicalities of bills and of certain policy issues. Now, the president was supposed to be a public figure, not a popular leader. They wanted to insulate him from public opinion because they were afraid that it would lead to demagoguery. So to do this, they established institutions and checks and balances and norms to ensure that the president was more of a public figure. For example, they created an electoral college so the president would not be elected directly, and they also had a presidential selection process that relied more on the president's reputation and public service rather than the promises they made while campaigning. Now, a president who was a popular leader was, to the Founding Fathers, a demagogue. And they wanted presidents to refrain from using rhetoric and mass public appeals to get the public to pressure Congress to pass legislation. So presidents in the 19th century would avoid emotional or manipulative rhetoric, and they would avoid advocating or opposing specific policies in their speeches. Instead, they would use persuasion and would defer to Congress. They would use backdoor persuasion, such as presidential newspapers. However, in crafting the Constitution, there was a loophole in that the Founding Fathers knew that the president had to have discretionary power to serve as president, and that in executing the laws, it required a discretionary power in the application and execution of these laws. And rhetorical power is also a discretionary power. Now, over the past 2 centuries, presidents have taken advantage of this discretionary power and this rhetorical power to evolve the rhetorical presidency to what it is today. Now, the first president who can be characterized as a rhetorical president is Teddy Roosevelt. Now, he was not a completely rhetorical president, but he did use demagogic tendencies and would appeal to the public directly to push Congress to push reforms. Yet he did it as a periodic resort. He still adhered to the constitutional order that was established, and he wanted to prevent worse demagoguery, what he thought was done by the socialists. It was Woodrow Wilson who normalized the rhetorical presidency and created what Jeffrey Tullis calls the Second Constitution, which redefined the role of the president and what his responsibilities are. Now, Woodrow Wilson became president in the height of the Progressive era, and the Progressives wanted a new presidential model where the president would use mass public appeals to the public to pressure Congress to bring about social reform, which had been unheard of to the Founding Fathers. Now, to the Progressives and to Woodrow Wilson, the popular leadership would not be demagoguery because the enlightened public wouldn't need that. And so Wilson did not believe that he was furthering demagoguery, yet in fact he was. Even his presidential candidacy was defined by personality-driven presidential politics, and it became an advertising campaign. And presidential campaigns since 1916 have been advertising campaigns. And politics have become personalized, and publicity has become about manipulating public opinion or about gathering support for presidential policies rather than about educating the public about an issue or bringing about accountability or transparency. Now, today, presidents use popular leadership and regularly appeal to public opinion, and we're living in the second Constitution. The White House is now filled with campaign consultants, media gurus, spinmeisters, speechwriters, and strategists who all further presidential rhetoric. The presidents are expected to promote their policies nationally, and they are expected to inspire and mobilize the population, and they are judged by how well they can persuade the public. So if Americans love democracy and we're about the public being involved, then why is this a problem? Why is it a problem, the role of public opinion being more pronounced now under the second Constitution? Jeffrey Tullis describes several reasons why this is indeed a major problem. First of all, it hinders rational deliberation. Rather than deferring to Congress where they could deliberate on all the intricacies of public policy, instead the president goes to the public and pushes them to push Congress to implement certain policies. So it preempts congressional deliberation, and it preempts deliberation between Congress and the president. Not only that, presidential appeals are followed by appeals from opposing leaders, so then deliberation decreases between elected officials. Furthermore, the rhetorical presidency causes disillusionment and disenchantment because political rhetoric is emphasized over policy substance, and complex issues are reduced to talking points and sound bites. And so the politicians appeal to the emotions rather than the intellect of the people. So when they realize that these issues are indeed much more complex, they are disillusioned. And presidential candidates use their rhetoric to set unrealistic expectations about their policies. And once they're in office, the public is quickly disenchanted with the president. For rhetoric does nothing to implement policies. So